Hi, this is Dr. Ned Hallowell. Thank you for joining us for this mini distraction. Like our full-length show, these minis will be different every time, only shorter. It's a busy world, and you don't have a lot of time. These episodes are for you. I'm really happy to welcome an old friend of mine, Maggie Jackson. She goes back to the days when she was writing at the Boston Globe, and then she came out with a wonderful book called Distracted, The Erosion of Attention in the Coming Dark Age, which was a very influential book. So welcome to my podcast, and let me just hand it to you. How do you see this world in terms of its ability or inability to deal with distraction these days?
Well, it's great to be with you, Ned, and as always, it's such an important topic. I see that the level of conversation regarding distraction and technology and the way we live today is rising. I see a kind of maturity, which often comes with technological innovations, right down to the beginning of the industrial age. And yet, of course, as we all know, our habits, our daily routines incorporate distraction. I mean, we now switch tasks every 3 minutes throughout the workday. We merely have to look up, which is what we don't do very often, to see the patterns and, I might say, to see the uneasiness. I think that's a very important point to underscore. The uneasiness with all of this is ratcheting up. And 70% of Americans now say the Internet has improved their quality of life, and yet 70% say they think it's making our society lazy and, that word, distracted. So I see this incredible opportunity amidst this uneasiness right now.
Say more about the uneasiness. What do you mean by uneasiness?
I think people are uneasy with the implications and the repercussions, with the ripple effects, if you will, of the habits that we've formed over the last, say, 5-10 years. With the advent of the smartphone and the laptop and the iPod, even that, before going back to that, the devices that have become so seamless in our lives and seem so easy to incorporate in our lives are now changing not only our social relationships, but what I'm really interested in right now is how they're changing our cognition, how we might actually be redefining intelligence as something quick and downloadable and clear-cut.
We say more about the implications of that.
Yeah. One thing that is being now researched and the findings are coming out. I mean, as you know, just a few years ago, we didn't have findings on what multitasking did to memory. We didn't know what Facebook was doing to narcissism or to general unhappiness among teenage girls. Now we're beginning to see what is the longer term effect. So one example would be, yes, it's clear that multitasking to a large degree causes frustration, stress, errors, etc. We know that. But what's now coming out of the research pipeline is the fact that there are longer-term effects from doing this day in and day out. So in other words, you're not just being changed in the moment, you are being changed over time when we splice our way through our lives. And just one example would be, we can absorb information when we're multitasking, when you're in that meeting or you're doing your homework with 3 other media online, and you can absorb information, but only in shallow ways. So work out of Stanford and other universities shows that when you're focusing, you're using basically knowledge networks of long-term memory storage. You're drinking, digesting that information in when you're focusing. But when you're multitasking, you're actually remembering or digesting information using more automatic parts of the brain. And so that information isn't able to be used in flexible ways. It's all more automatic and rigid, if you will. In other words, when you're multitasking right through your homework or through that meeting, you'll come out and the next day you might not be able to draw at all upon that information that you absorbed, the new information. But if you are, you'll only be able to draw on it in the exact same circumstances. That's called, as you know, transfer. And that transfer, that flexible use of creative, linking the dots, and when I'm in the client meeting the next day, I remember what happened yesterday that I can draw on. That doesn't happen if you've been multitasking through your days. And the cumulative effect is, of course, enormous on our knowledge stores. That's, I think, what happens when we live lives like this without, again, lives of one tempo, lives of one type of thinking, lives of distraction. That's what, these are some of the costs that we're beginning to see.
And the cumulative effect is what?
The cumulative effect is that you're not going to have flexible information that you can creatively draw on. For instance, there are long-term longitudinal studies now of creativity scores in the United States. This is everything from kindergartners to adults. And across the board, these scores are dropping. Even humor or imagination or seeing something from a different point of view, the scores are all dropping. But the score that's dropped the most, and this is just about in the last 10 years or so, since the mid-'90s, but particularly in the last 10 years, is something called elaboration. That's the ability to put flesh on an idea, to elaborate, to, take that idea and, again, connect the dots, et cetera, et cetera. It's a form of focus and perseverance, but it's also a form of flexible thinking, and that has dropped 40% in that time period. Wow. 40%.
Well, Maggie, it's terrific to reconnect with you, and I'm glad you're as stimulating and productive as ever.
Well, thanks, Ned. I'm so glad to get the call, and I'm thrilled that you're doing this podcast. It's great and so well done. So good job. Great job.
Thank you. Well, we'll have to have you on again.
Thanks. I'd love that.
All right. Take care.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
That's it. If you have an issue, a question, or a suggestion, call us toll-free at 844-55-CONNECT or email at connect@distractionpodcast.com or go to our website at distractionpodcast.com. To hear more mini and full-length episodes, subscribe to Distraction on iTunes. And thanks so much for listening.